Honorable Dr. Adit Gupta, Principal MIER College Jammu, Dr. Jaspal Singh Ji, Associate Professor, Directorate of Distance Education, Jammu University, Jammu.
जशपाल सर का लेक्चर लगा.
Respected Principal Sir, dear colleagues and fellow participants, a very good morning to all. Today, it is 5th day of our beautiful 7 days journey, and I am thankful to our worthy principal and the whole team of IQAC for giving me opportunity for interacting with such august audience. Yesterday, we had a very productive session with Dr. Arvind Kumar Jha, Dean, School of Education, Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Lucknow, on constructivist pedagogy. In the short time, Dr. Jha really put Gagar Mein Sagar and discussed paradigm shift in teaching pedagogy, especially in pandemic era. He discussed basic paradigms of pedagogies, constructivist learning, constructivist teaching, and benefits of constructivist approach. Later, Dr. Sandeep Sani, Principal, Doraha College of Education, gave the presidential remarks. Dear friends, as written in the Sanskrit, Durlabham Tremevete Devanugraha Hetukam Manushyatam Mumukshtam Mahapurusha Samshre. That means 3 things are difficult to obtain and one gets only with the mercy of God. These 3 things are human birth, the desire of salvation, and the company of great scholars. So I am very thankful to our Honorable Principal Sir who gave us opportunity to hear and interact with such learned personalities. Today, we have a very renowned name in the field of education, Dr. Adit Gupta, Principal MIER College Jammu with us. Dr. Gupta is the Director of Model Institute of Education and Research Jammu and is also a professor and principal at the MIER College of Education. He has a PhD in the field of technology supported learning environments from Curtin University, Perth, Australia, and master's degree in psychology and education. Dr. Gupta has over 24 years of teaching and professional experience at various levels and has contributed a lot for the promotion of educational research in the institution. Recipient of prestigious Endeavour Executive Award of the Australian government in the year 2009 for conducting research in the area of specialization, his specialization. He has also been appointed as Endeavour Awards Ambassador for the year 2016 by Australian government and is also an adjunct research fellow at Curtin University, Australia. He is also an alumnus of the International Visitors Leadership Program of the US government, wherein he was invited to visit United States to study the system of primary and secondary education, psychological learning environments, educational technology, educational psychology, educational measurement and evaluation, teacher and school education are his primary area of research. He is a member of various prestigious bodies such as National Association of Research in Science Teaching, USA, the American Education Research Association, All India Association for Educational Research, and Australasian Science Education Research Association. Dr. Gupta has participated and presented papers in numerous national and international conferences and has been working as a reviewer and assessor of research paper at the international levels. Dr. Gupta is also the managing editor of the MIER Journal of Educational Studies, Trends and Practices, an international peer-reviewed journal. Dr. Gupta has been a trained assessor of the NAAC and has acted as the member coordinator for the various NAAC peer team visits in the past. He has been awarded an innovation patent by the Registrar of Patents, Commonwealth of Australia, for the research on online teaching and learning. Besides, he has also received the Editorial Excellence Award twice, National Eminent Editor Award, International Academic Leader Award, and Best Senior Research Award for his contribution to the academia and research. We are indeed privileged to have such towering personality amongst us. Now I request our Vice Principal Professor, Mrs. Shailendra Kaur, to formally welcome our resource person of the day. Over to Ma'am Shailendra.
Thank you, Professor Neeraj. Resource person for the day, Dr. Adit Gupta, Principal, MIER College, Jammu, Dr. Jaspal Singh, Associate Professor, DDE, Jammu University, Principal Dr. Khushwinder Kumar, and all participants. Good morning and a very warm welcome to all on day 5 of this capacity building program on integration of pedagogy and technology in teaching learning. The topic which is going to be deliberated upon today is innovative practices in technology and research. Technological advancements are a sine qua non in the contemporary digital world. Education has never been as dependent on digital equipments as it is today. In fact, technology has enabled the smooth functioning of educational institutions ever since the suspension of offline teaching learning process. It becomes even more significant to update and enhance our existing structures for any novel and unexpected changes in our education system. As administrators and teachers, it is our responsibility to consider technology an indispensable armament in effective teaching. The world is too full of opportunities focused on making our pedagogical skills outcome-oriented and accessible across borders. As our higher education needs are enormous and dynamic, beset by a number of challenges like unemployment and brain drain, the need of the hour is to drastically re-energize and rejuvenate our higher education sector through innovation and excellence, both in academics and research. There is an urgent need for the reassessment of the procedures and practices in our country, followed by brainstorming deliberations on the challenges emerging out of the fast-changing international scenario. In this very context, there is a need to develop strategies and take necessary measures for enhancing research and promoting research quality at our higher education institutes. Research is an integral part of a teacher's professional growth. It has a huge impact on the quality of the lectures we deliver, the assessment and evaluation techniques we utilize, and the consciousness that we try to raise in our students. It is imperative for the institutions to train their teachers in both these overlapping and distinct areas. The participants of this capacity building program are quite keen and enthusiastic to learn from an erudite personality like Dr. Adit Gupta, a dynamic academician and administrator, which is reflected in the pioneering status of his college among the top 5 teacher education institutes in the country. I warmly welcome you, sir, and ardently wish that we all gain tremendously from this session. Once again, a very warm welcome. Over to you, Professor Neeraj.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I'll request Honorable Dr. Adit Gupta to share his words of wisdom with our participants. Over to Dr. Adit.
So thank you very much, Dr. Neeraj, for this warm welcome, Dr. Shailendra. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Khushvinder Kumar for inviting me for today's session. I also like to welcome Dr. Jaspal Singh from the DDE University of Jammu, who has very kindly consented to be part of this program. Today's session that I'm going to take is going to talk about, innovative practices in research and technology. So if I'm allowed to share my screen. Yes. So I hope this is visible to everyone.
Yes, Dr. Adit, it is
Yes, sir.
Right. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have exactly 1 hour to deal with this entire topic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide my presentation into more of practical aspects where especially technology in the different aspects of the functioning of the college and what innovative practices in research we are doing at our end that can be emulated by other colleges and other colleges of education in Northern India, and also in all those participating colleges from where we have esteemed people and faculty members who are participating in this virtual 7-day faculty development program. So I would just like to start with, this quote from NAC, that institutional excellence in higher education is the aggregate of the innovative and best practices followed in different areas of institutional performance. So if we want to excel as an organization, if we want to excel as an institution, it depends upon how many innovative practices or best practices in different aspects of the institution we follow. And it is the collective sum of all these innovative practices that institution excellence can be achieved. Therefore, focus on technology and focus on research is one of the most key areas where institutions need to focus nowadays if they have to excel or if they have to exceed in reputation and in terms of delivering quality of teaching learning process and results and the best outcomes for their students, in times to come. So that is why these innovative practices are extremely important. And according to NAC, there are 5 main benefits of these innovative practices. Number 1, it adds commendable value to the institution and its various stakeholders. Number 2, they're considered as reliable benchmarks or standards of quality, because whenever we undertake an innovative practices and the results are good, we set a benchmark for ourselves. Okay, this is what we have achieved till now. We now need to achieve something further than this. So it helps us to set a benchmark. It provides a roadmap for self-improvement to the institutions. So every institution has developed a roadmap. Maybe it's a 5-year plan, maybe it's a 10-year plan, where every institute either wants to start innovative programs, they want to improve upon their existing research output, they want to add more technology in their teaching learning process, or it could be any particular objective that they want to achieve. So adopting these innovative practices, helps develop a roadmap for self-improvement. That okay, in this year, if we wanted to have suppose technology in all the classrooms, we've done that. What next? So the next phase of that particular development is very clear through this roadmap. Then it helps in focusing on continuous improvement efforts. So whenever you achieve one goal, there is a next goal that we have to achieve. So it is not quality is always a continuous process. It's a never ending process. We cannot say that, okay, now I have achieved this and that is the end all of it all. No, whenever we achieve a goal or an objective, we always strive to, better that or improve upon that or enhance upon that than what we have already achieved. So it helps us in focusing on continuous improvement. And then the most important thing, it helps in closing the gap between an existing practice of the institution and that of the best in class institution. So whenever we talk about innovative practices, we look outwards. We look at what other top colleges in the country are doing. We look at what top universities in the country are doing. We look at other colleges and universities around the globe. Social media is one such big platform which helps us in understanding what new things and innovative practices are happening all around us. So it helps us in closing the gap between an existing practice and that of a best-in-class institution. So we always strive to emulate or try to achieve an institution, or we try to follow an institution which has already achieved excellence in a particular area. So we always keep on innovating and keep on adding best practices, for institutions. There are, 5 steps, or I can say a 4 I&D model of NAAC, which says how these innovative practices are to be adopted. So first, as an institution, we need to identify what these best practices are. For that, we require to do a SWOT analysis or a SWOT analysis, which is your strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And based upon that, what your strengths are, where you want to improve, what are the opportunities that are available around you, and what are the threats around you. Once we assess that, we are able to identify these best practices. Then we need to implement these best practices. Once they are implemented and found successful, then we institutionalize best practices. So say, for example, if your Department of Science has developed an innovative practice or a best practice, and they were successfully able to implement it, maybe that practice could be emulated by the Department of English, by the Department of Humanities, by the Department of Behavioral Sciences, or Department of Mathematics, to say so. So then you institutionalize it. That means everybody in the institution is trying to emulate that best practice. And then we internalize it. That means we need to sometimes also evaluate that whether the original outcomes that have been planned, have those been achieved, whether we have been able to achieve the objectives for which a particular practice was done. So we internalize those best practices, and then once those best practices are set, we are happy with the performance, everybody's happy in using them, then we disseminate. So dissemination of best practices is also very, very important, so that other people in the education line or other institutions could follow these best practices and bring about qualitative improvements in their functioning, whether it is in the teaching learning process, whether it is in examinations, whether it is in administration, whether it is in providing student services, whether it is in managing your alumni and placement activities. So it could be in any aspect, of the functioning of the college. So the 5-step process, you always need to remember: identification, implementation, institutionalization, then internalization, and then dissemination, so that everybody could benefit from these best practices. So coming to innovative practices in technology, some of the areas where technology can be used in an institution are the teaching learning process, in the terms of assessments, in the administration of the college, in the whole student life cycle management, in the financial management, brand building, a 360-degree feedback mechanism, and data analytics. So I'm just going to touch upon each aspect of where technology is being used, and I'm going to share with you some examples and some some areas where we are using technology in our institution that has immensely benefited us completely. So we've all shifted to the new technology paradigm. Because since this pandemic hit us, although all institutions were using technology to some extent, but this pandemic has taught us that without technology, we would not have achieved the ends of learning. If there was no technology, we would not have been able to complete the teaching learning process. We would not have been able to complete the curriculum in various programs. We would not have been able to engage our learners, and they would just have whiled away their time sitting at homes, doing frivolous activities. So this teaching learning process has been greatly impacted by technology, and we as an institution actively adopt a learning management system. In fact, we have a learning management system based on the Google Classroom platform. This Google Classroom platform is part of the Google G Suite, which brings about all the tools of teaching learning into the college, and they can be easily utilized by teachers and students alike. In fact, there are many such platforms like Zoom. There is Microsoft, MS Teams. Then we have platforms such as Moodle, which are a true learning management system. They have the ability to self-drive teaching and learning, where students can come and attend a particular program at their own pace, time, and can access it at any given time of convenience. So we use a Google Classroom platform. We also use Google Classroom as a lecture capture system, so that whenever the students who are unable to attend classes, or maybe who are unable to connect due to connectivity issues, they were able to access those classrooms at any given point of time later. So just let me show you some examples of the learning management system that we have developed in our institution. So if you can share my screen, I'm sharing with you the different Google Classrooms for different semesters, for different programs that our teachers had established, and all our classes are being conducted through this Google Classroom platform for the B.Ed program, for the M.Ed program, for the B.Ed special education, the M.A., and the M.Phil programs in education. And then just to give you an example of what happens is, like, for example, this is my class and I teach educational statistics. So whenever we teach a class, all the class material is uploaded according to the different topics that the teacher teaches. There is a stream of data that we can upload. So this is a topic that has been taught. So suppose this is computation of mean. So here is the video of that particular class that has been taught to the students, and these students can review that video. Apart from the video, I can always assess the students. So, like, for example, if this was a work that has been given to students to draw the histogram and frequency polygon, so what they do is they draw these, they complete their assignments, and they upload into the system. So here I'm just going to show you one example of the student's work that has been done. So she submitted her work for the teacher to evaluate, and she had done it on her copy. So she just made a PDF file and uploaded the document. And once that document was uploaded, our teachers, in fact, not just me, but all our teachers, they just use the digital way of correcting the data. They use the digital way to outline the problems in that particular the assignment submitted by the students. We give them our feedback. So everything is being done digitally. We've completely transformed our teaching learning process into a live class. We also take up these this lecture capture system. So this is again an example of a lecture that is happening in the classroom, but this the faculty is teaching, and this whole board is being captured, and this class is being recorded. So the students can later, if they have missed out on the online connectivity. So this is a complete blended learning environment where we are having a physical class. It is also being recorded. It is also being seen by students from their homes, and also they can later access this class. So if they want to revise a particular topic, so it can be done. So this kind of lecture capture system and an online teaching learning process has been set up in the institution. Similarly, we use the YouTube to prepare video lessons for our teachers. So this is just an example of the YouTube channel. Now this YouTube channel is a private channel of the institution and is accessible only to teachers and students of the institution. It is not an open access resource at the moment, but now we are preparing our open educational resources. So we'll be sharing these resources to be seen by all the faculty members. So this is just a small sample of the video that our teachers prepare. We have a Center for Educational Technology that takes care of the designing needs.
Today's video lecture is on the topic resource room. This is from Unit 3, Sub-Unit 3.1 of M.
So this is how, you know, the lecture goes on.
So
The
going
teacher
to
keeps
the
on explaining,
concept,
and the slide keeps on moving, and everything is recorded. And the biggest, you know, plus point is that students have access to this kind of material, even when they are not in the college, or they can access this material from their own homes. Similarly, we have the online assessment system that has been set up in the college. So we assess students in two ways. We have an open book examination system. So our teachers develop specifically questions related to open book assessment. They post it in their groups, and students, you know, attempt those questions. They are uploaded into our learning management system, and then every evaluation is being done online. Their you know, marks are being graded online. So this open book assessment is one area, and then we have very interesting the online quiz system. So we use a platform which is called as Quizzes, and all teachers, you know, prepare their midterm assessments, their end term assessments using this platform. So this is again one of the assessments that I have created. So you can see complex equations, complex formulas, all can be very easily done in this particular platform. So you can also give the amount of time that each student needs to spend on answering a particular question. You can, you know, give the feedback to the students there and then at the end you just go and download the reports. You just click here, you will come to know which student has answered all the 10 questions, who has answered 9, and similarly somebody has answered, you know, just 8, somebody has answered 7 correctly. So automatic grading, automatic allotment of marks is done by the system. As a teacher, I don't have to go and recheck each and every paper, and I can just download a complete report from here. I can just click on download, and it is going to prepare a report for me, and the entire report will be downloaded for me to assess later on. So we use the online assessment system. We also use our YouTube channel. I'm very happy to see that the college has also made the YouTube video which you played in the beginning as an introduction. So these are, you know, some of the innovative practices that all institutions need to adopt when they want to promote their college or when they want to provide information regarding their college. So we have our own you know, YouTube channel. So we conduct these online webinars. All our activities, whatever happens in the college, is being posted online. So this is an open access platform for everybody to see. So we had people from the US, from Australia, from UK delivering you know, webinars and online lectures, and these are all you know, innovative practices and greatly appreciated by all the stakeholders. Similarly, we are now developing the mobile learning platform wherein students using their mobile phones would be able to, you know, access their learning resources, will have access to communicate with teachers, will have access to, you know, conduct their classes and attend classes using their mobile platform. So hopefully by next month, this mobile platform will be active, and we'll be able to, you know, demonstrate it for people who are interested in understanding how mobile learning is happening in the institution. Then we also use technology in our you know, result management. So all our processes of the college are, you know, managed through an enterprise resource planning software. This software, right from the admission of the students to the passing out of the student, the whole life cycle management of the student is being done through an ERP. So we have automated results. You know, the papers that us teachers check, they are all barcoded. Nobody knows, like you have a coding and decoding system. So we have the decoding and coding system, which is completely digital. So nobody knows whose paper is it. So you just put a barcode, scan it through the software, and then you'll come to know which student, which semester, what is the roll number, and then you just give grades, and then the results are automatically populated, and we can have the result gazette and the result declaration done at the end of the semester. The complete academic management, from their certificates, from their you know, attendance, from their internal assessment, evaluation, everything is being done through an enterprise resource planning software. Thus, to do all this, you need to have good technology infrastructure. And this is one thing which I really stress on. So you should have all institutions need to have a fiber-based backbone connectivity in their institutions. They should have access to high-speed internet. They should have good teaching learning infrastructure in terms of digital interactive boards, good quality cameras for recording lectures. Then they should have a Wi-Fi campus, laptops, projectors, and all those new and modern ICT equipment if they want to really bring a meaningful change in the teaching learning process using technology. Apart from this, so the complete life cycle management, as I had mentioned to you earlier, so the enterprise resource planning, the online inquiry and admissions management system, fee payment system, the students document management system, the financial accounting, the library management, complete library is automated. We have the employees attendance and payroll management system as well. So for example, let me just show you this small example. So every employee, marks their attendance on their mobile phones. It is through face recognition technology. They can apply for their leaves online. They have all their attendance managed on time. So if you want to approve somebody's leave, everything, is done completely online. So people can apply and then you can just click and approve. And the whole process is completely online. Similarly, we have assets and visitors management and alumni placement activities. So non-teaching activities are also influenced by the use of technology. Then where technology helps us is in brand building. So like I already appreciated your YouTube video. This is also a brand building exercise and you are using the power of social media. So you need to promote your YouTube page. Similarly, you need to have a very good interactive website of the institution, which gives you a broad area of what you are doing. It highlights your achievements. It gives access to students to the key information that is not available anywhere else. You need to have a good social media presence. So I would recommend having these 4 social media pages. So the Facebook page, the Instagram page, the LinkedIn and the Twitter page. And out of these, the LinkedIn and the Twitter are the 2 pages that have the maximum traction from a professional link building and educational point of view. So you need to use the power of social media. You need to indulge in social media marketing. So whenever you bring out your admissions, whenever you bring out, so for example, this particular advertisement could be run throughout the year on your social media platforms, which could be a good brand building exercise. So just to give you a small sample of what these brand building looks like. So like, for example, we run our advertisements on social media for various programs. So they could be run as a carousel ad. We also have a video advertisement of the college like you had shown us earlier. So it runs throughout the year. And similarly, whatever advertisements come from time to time. So these are all promoted on social media. And we know that because of the pandemic, people stopped taking newspapers in their homes. What was the only way to, approach people? Everybody was online, everybody was owned in their homes. So they had no access to information from outside. So social media is the biggest platform wherein you can, promote your brand and promote your college, promote its courses, promote the achievements of the faculty and the students in a big way. So this is, a key area where all institutions can work. Then taking feedbacks is a very, very important aspect, and taking feedbacks from your stakeholders. So a 360-degree feedback mechanism needs to be developed in the institution. So feedback from students, feedback from faculty, feedback from parents, feedback from the community, feedback from your employers if you have a good placement cell. So the companies where your students are going, you can always have a feedback about how your students are performing and whether they had the requisite skills to be a good employee in the institution. And then based on the feedback, you could have improvement programs run. So what we do is we have a completely online feedback system. We use a software called SurveyMonkey. So this software is completely free to use, but then for advanced analytics, you could always pay for this software as well. And there are different plans and pricing. So if I just give you an example of what kind of surveys do we have. So like you can see here, we have a student feedback on teachers. We have the training needs identification feedback. We have an exit survey. So whenever students join the institution, we take a feedback. Whenever the students leave the institutions, we take a feedback. Then we have, the entry survey. We have the training needs for students. We have students' feedback on curriculum. So a lot of, and then you can see how many number of students have filled up this feedback. And then we can see the responses. We can analyze the data, and this can give us key information as to how the different facilities and different services in the institution are performing. So I'll recommend this SurveyMonkey, software, which is an online platform to really use technology in taking feedbacks. You can always use Google Maps to promote your institution. You could always choose virtual tours. So like you've created a video, we've also created a virtual tour. So if you want to come and see what my institution looks like, so you can, see this virtual tour, and you can navigate through the entire institution. So I can just move around, see the institution, what my college looks like. And if possible, maybe I could just zoom into some areas of the college, and also, visit the different sections of the college. So if I want to go into a class, I can just keep on zooming. Yeah, so sorry. Yeah, so I'm just trying to go into one of the classes. So this is, if somebody wants to know what technology you are using in a class, so you can just go to the class and see, okay, there's a projector, there's a digital interactive board, what is the seating like, facilities like air conditioning or air cooling, so stuff like that. And then you can go to, different areas of the college. So I want to show you what my, the college ground looks like. I have a court. So these are, small different things that can make a difference to students who want to visit your institution by having these kind of virtual tours. And you can have different sections of the institution, the library, the computer lab. So whatever you want to show, you can use, Google virtual tours to show your facilities to the students. You can also have faculty and student blogs. You can publish open educational resources. Now this is a very big area, open educational resources. Everybody is going towards open access. That means we want information to be disseminated to a lot of people. If you publish your papers, they have to be open access. If you publish your books, they have to be open access. Whatever teaching learning resources that you are building, maybe PowerPoint presentations or videos, you need to put them in open access so they are widely accessible to people. So this is a very important platform. We are currently working on developing open educational resources. So in the next 3 to 4 months, we'll be launching our open access platform, and we'll really appreciate if all of you could, review that, use that, and also give your feedback and how that platform is doing. So once it is done, we'll share that with you. And last but not the least, from NAC point of view, from NIRF point of view, or from any other agency that deals with data analytics, or they want data for the last 5 years, 10 years, 7 years, and how many papers have you produced, or the research output, your results, your placements, how many seminars, conferences, workshops your faculty has attended during the last 5-7 years. So we are using this platform called PI360 for data analytics. This is a very interesting software, and this has revolutionized our working, and the way we manage our data has been completely changed. I'll just take 2 minutes to show you this PI360, which is a very interesting thing. So if you want to use that, this is an internally developed platform. We'll be happy to share how you can use this platform in your institution. So if somebody goes to my page, I can in one go look at what is my research publications, what are my achievements, how many seminars, conferences, workshops I have attended, how many guest lectures have been done, what other activities, what are the results, what are the placements in recent times, and then I can drill down. So जैसे हम suppose NAC में कहते हैं कि we need to keep printouts of the papers that we have published in the last so many years, and then we arrange them year wise. So this has all been done here digitally. So when NAC comes and visits my institution, I can, just go to the departmental dashboard, choose the postgraduate department of education. So this will completely give me, the departmental performance index. It will tell me how many people I have, how many assistant professors, how many professors, how many associate professors, what are their qualifications, how many are PhD, how many are pursuing, and how many are postgraduates, what is the total faculty experience. So suppose in my college we have 66% faculty who have more than 10 years of experience. And then I can see my academic records. So still 2018-19, these records have been updated. We are now updating these records. So research and development. If I want to see, okay, in 2020, there were 8 papers that have been published. So I just click on this and it will tell me what are those 8 papers that have been published. Now, if I want to see, okay, suppose this is one of my papers. So I just go and click on this. What was this paper about? So I have the abstract of this paper. Who was my co-author? Where was this publication? Okay, in a journal. What was the ISSN number of the journal? Who was the publisher? Springer. Whether it is indexed, where it is in Scopus, it is in UGC approved journal. And then if I want to see where this paper has been published online, so the link of that paper is also here. So I just click on this and the whole system will automatically, direct me to the Springer Link website where I can see where my paper has been published and what all is happening with that paper. Similarly, I can, show you, okay, if you want to see where, show me the sample of this paper. So you can just click on the full paper and you will get a copy of the full paper along with, the references, along with the full text of the data, and it is all open access. So anybody who has access to the system can, get this kind of information. Similarly, if we have a patent, so this was a patent, we clicked on the patent, we can just click on the data, we can find what the patent was about, who was the inventor, when was it granted. And if I want to see, okay, show me your patent certificate, so I can just click on the data and the patent certificate will be available for anybody to see. So from, NAC's point of view, हमको ये सारी photocopies रखनी पड़ती थी, अलग-अलग files maintain करनी पड़ती थी. So now only at the quick click of a button, I can, have access to this. The other beauty of this particular aspect is, so say for example, I want to link it with, my Google Scholar or with my any other account. So the Google Scholar link is also given, the ResearchGate link is also given. So this is for this same technique is being used for every faculty that we have in the college. So everybody, puts up their paper. So this is another paper by Dr. Nishtha Rana from our institution. So we just click on this, you'll come to know, and whether it is indexed in UGC, and if I want to see the full paper, I'll just click on the paper and we'll get a copy of that paper for our use. So this is how we are using data analytics in our institution to manage things. In fact, not only this, we also manage students' performance. So if I want to see who are the top most performing students in my institution, so I have leaderboards. So when I click on leaderboards and I click on the different departments, so for B.Ed, it shows me that for 2019, these are the top performing students in the institution. And I can still go down and click on a student and I can have the full profile of the students, and I can come to know what is their name, location, their contact details, whether she's, top in academics, number 4 in co-curricular, number 1 in extracurricular, and I can go down and see what is her percentile and how is she doing as compared to other students, what has been her performance in the last 2 semesters. So every information I can get, and students can just with a click of a button also develop a CV for placement purposes, and all the data that they enter into the software automatically comes for the students. So similarly, we have it for our all departments. There is trend analysis, there are reports, there are faculty profiles, there is the system for IQAC, there is a full admin panel. So we can have the full institutional dashboard in one go. I can see what my results have been for the last year, what has been my graduation rate, what has been my pass percentage, what has been my departmental research output, what has been my staff development programs that our staff has done. Every aspect is available in graphical digital form, and I can just drill down to each and every aspect and analyze each and every aspect of data that I have in the institution. So this is one platform that we use almost daily to track the performance of the institution and analyze the data that we have. So this is one of the examples that we have using technology for managing the entire working in the institution. So coming to research, what are those innovative practices in research that we do? So how can colleges improve their research output by having journal publications? And here I would like to give you an advice that we should always follow ethics in publications. We should always publish in journals that are indexed in good databases, and we should always participate in conferences both at the national and international level. So now all these international conferences are also being conducted online, so this is a very good opportunity this time. You could always participate in national and international conferences. You could always improve your research outputs by becoming resource persons and keynote speakers, and you could always enhance your output by writing books and books chapters. There are a lot of people who are currently writing books and book chapters, so you could connect with them and improve your research output. You could always become a part of the various editorial boards of journals, and you could always be empaneled as a reviewer in one of the journals, so that gives you an idea, and that gives you access to what different kind of research people are doing around the world, and also gives you practice in evaluating and comparing your research with them. Then you could also bring out thesis and dissertation. So if you are a postgraduate college, or even if you're an undergraduate college, you could always conduct action research, and for people who have programs, research programs at the master's level and at the doctoral level, they could always improve their research outputs by bringing theses and dissertations and then taking out papers from these publications and send them to journals for publication. And then you could always improve your research output by getting sponsored research projects from agencies like ICSSR or the DST, and then you could always, if some research opportunities are not available and fundings are not available, as an institution, you could always encourage your faculty to participate or prepare research projects, and then some funding can be given to them. For example, we ask our faculty to develop research projects, and we give them seed money, say 15,000, 20,000 rupees to undertake research, and then encourage them to publish their results in journals. And that is how the cycle of publication also improves, your research output also increases, and teachers get encouraged, because writing the first time research paper is one of the most difficult things. So it's only by encouragement and by practice that you will be able to improve your research output. Then some other practices that every researcher needs to do, or every person who is involved with research, whether it is in the field of education or sciences or other social sciences, you need to have some of these IDs. One is a Google Scholar ID. So Google Scholar is one of the largest freely accessible educational research platforms, which indexes research papers from all publications. So whenever you publish a paper, you always need to link that paper with your Google Scholar account. I'm just going to show you some examples of Google Scholar accounts. So what happens when you link your paper? So this is, for example, my Google Scholar account, and you need to add all your data. So whenever a paper is published, you need to add, and then Google calculates your citations, it calculates your H index, it calculates your I10 index, which is how many times your papers have been cited. And this is a very good matrix to have for your NAC, because NAC asks what is your H index, what is your I10 index. So Google Scholar platform can help you do that. Then you could always create your ResearchGate IDs, and ResearchGate also analyzes your profile. It helps you develop your citations, how many reads to your paper, total research interest and recommendations. So these are all ways of connecting with people, other researchers, and improving your research output in the long run. Similarly, you can connect on academia. This is another excellent site to build your connections in terms of enhancing your research. And here also you need to upload your papers, so you can see how many people have viewed your papers, how many you are in the top 4% or you have 7 public mentions. So this also really helps you a lot. And then you can also create your own personal website using the academia platform. So this is your own research website which can be accessible to anybody to come and collaborate with you. They can see what research you are doing. They can download your CV. They can contact you through this form. So this is another platform which can help you improve your research connections and ultimately have you improve more research. Then 2 international IDs that everybody must have is one of the Scopus ID, and the other is a researcher ID, which is also called as the Web of Science, this was earlier called Thomson Reuters, but now it is the Web of Science. And then they have the Social Sciences Citation Index, they have the SCI, the Science Citation Index, they have the Emerging Sources Citation Index. So this is also one of the biggest 2 indexing databases in the world where you could create your ID. So, and this happens once you've published your paper in a Scopus journal. So you can create your Scopus ID, and then your citations are mapped, and then you can track what your papers are doing, how many citations have been happened, and what is your H index. So this also gives you your account. Similarly, your Web of Science, which is your Publons, the research index. Here also you need to create your ID, so you get your Web of Science research ID here, and then all your papers are also indexed. They also give you the metrics and the publications about your research performance. And then one of the last things that you need to do is create an ORCID, which is an open researcher and contributor ID. So all the top journals in the world, whenever they publish papers, they require every author to have an ORCID ID. So this again is a practice that you need to undertake. So if this is a free ID that you can create, just go to ORCID, create your ID, and then it also tracks your papers. And you see your, if you can see on the left hand side, the researcher ID and the Scopus ID are automatically linked with ORCID. So whenever you put a paper in Scopus, whenever you put a paper in Springer or Web of Science, it automatically caters to your ORCID account also. And all these 3 important IDs are interlinked, and this is one of the best ways to promote your research as a researcher. So I'll encourage all institutions to kindly conduct a small workshop, help your teachers create your Google Scholar accounts. This can be done if you have your Gmail IDs, and then you should have your ResearchGate account, you should have your academia, create your Scopus and Web of Science IDs, and also create an your ORCID ID, because these 3-4 international IDs will help you get traction for research, improve the research output of the institution as well as of the researcher. And this is going to be a very, very healthy practice, irrespective of which regulatory body comes and checks your college or institution, whether it is NAC, whether it is NIRF, whether it is any other body. They will always have a very good impression if you have these innovative practices in research implemented for your teachers and for your institution. Then 2 more aspects that I would like to talk about, because I'm just coming at the end of my presentation. Every researcher, every teacher needs to create a LinkedIn network. Every person needs to create a Twitter account. Now, don't conceive Twitter to be, it could be used for social and for other purposes also. But since I have experimented it only with educational purposes, and I found that Twitter has one of the biggest reaches in terms of academic content. Twitter and LinkedIn both have excellent academic connections, excellent research connections. All top journals in the world have their Twitter and LinkedIn accounts. Top researchers in the world have their LinkedIn and Twitter accounts. And this is an excellent platform for you to connect with these people, to learn from them, to learn from their research. And also, these two are an excellent medium to promote your research. So if you are bringing out a publication, put it on LinkedIn, put it on Twitter, and then you will see that people start recognizing you. They think that you are one of the experts or an authority in that particular field where you are publishing. You will develop your connections. You will get inputs from other researchers to do collaborative research projects. You will get offers from publications to put your next paper into their publication. So these are two new ways of promoting research, and personally me and my faculty members in the institution have really found it to be an excellent tool for promoting research. And last but not the least, the Indian Research Information Network System, which is called as IRINS. This is a new platform that has been developed by the Government of India in collaboration with InfilibNet. And this platform is now creating research profiles of Indian academic institutions and Indian academicians. So you need to apply to IRINS with all your data to get your institutional dashboard created. And then your faculty members can also create their individual profiles on this IRINS platform. And once this is done, the IRINS will merge the two together automatically. So all your teachers and your institution will have the same platform to share their research and other information with the rest of the world. So you need to apply to them, but you cannot do it on your own. So I'm just going to show you a small example of how this platform looks like. So this is a platform, just last month our platform was developed. So it gives information about the faculty, it gives information about our publications, it gives information about our impact, how many citations are there. It provides information about the faculty, their profile, their publications. So this is all being done automatically based upon what data you upload. And then if you want to see your public profile, your institutional profile, so you can just click on the person, and you will come to know their entire research record, what is their H index, their citations, which researchers they have worked out with in which year. So a very nice relationship matrix is available. You see here also your ORCID ID, your Scopus ID, your researcher ID, and your Google Scholar ID, all are interlinked. So IRINS is also pulling data from all these international databases. So if you have those accounts, this platform will automatically fetch data from there. So that is why I was focusing on why every researcher needs to have these ORCID ID, Scopus ID, researcher ID, and a Google Scholar ID, because platforms like these auto-populate that data from these very important databases. And then it shows you your expertise, your experience, your qualification, your awards, and your memberships, and then your research projects, and your patents, and then your publications. And now this recently, the alt matrix has also been, integrated into this IRINS platform. So again, this platform, I'll recommend every researcher, every institution to immediately prepare. And then the biggest advantage is I can look at my fellow faculty members from my institution who are also enrolled in this platform. So if I just want to see their profile, I can click on anybody and I can see their profile, their relationships, their IDs, their research output, and their papers that have been published from time to time. So an excellent tool to really promote your research and to show your achievements in your area of expertise and your area of research. So please create your LinkedIn professional accounts, create your Twitter accounts. If your institutions, yes, your institutions should also create your LinkedIn and Twitter profiles for their promotion of social media. And IRINS platform is an excellent platform to promote your innovative practices in research. And then what you can need to do is you need to publish in credible journals, so CareList and all those journals who are indexed in Scopus and Web of Science. So choose journals which are indexed in prominent databases like ProQuest. You have ERIC. You have Index Copernicus. So these are 3-4 widely promoted indexed databases. You have the Indian Citation Index, which is the largest populated database of journals. You have JGate, which provides access to over 40,000 freely accessed journals and their articles. Millions of articles are there. So you should choose these databases and those journals where they are indexed. You should post your publications on social media and through institutional website. So I was reiterating my focus again and again on LinkedIn and Twitter profiles. So you can do that. You need to create a personal research website. So like I had shown you my website in academia, you could use that to promote your research output. And then you could always, as an institution, bring out a journal, and then you could publish your abstracts, you could publish your research summaries. So I can show you, this is the example of the journal that we bring out. So this is the Meyer Journal of Educational Studies. So since we are a College of Education, we bring out a journal. So it gives you, our scope, what is the process like, how you can do. So everything is completely online, where we are indexed, what is our announcement. So we are accepting now papers for the 2022. All 21 editions are already booked. This is our current edition, and you can just maybe click on a paper, check out who has written this paper. You can download the free paper from this particular site. So this, you could always start a journal of maybe science or journal of education, and then who is on your editorial board, etc., etc. So completely you can manage your publication process, and this gives boost to the faculty members also to publish. And then we also bring out research summaries. So like, for example, in our college we bring out the research summaries. These are some of our publications. I'll just like to focus on something. So yeah, so research perspectives. So all those students, like MEd students, MPhil students, whenever they complete their dissertations, so their summaries are published here, and these are widely promoted. We could always have a publication of abstracts of research papers. So there could be hundreds and hundreds of ways of how you can promote research, by bringing out a journal, by publication research summaries, etc. So there are numerous ways of promoting research. So publish in credible journals, and then post publications on social media. So last but not the least, I would like to say that in order to really promote research, you need to have a research promotion policy, which should have funding and felicitation. So for example, in our institution, we have a research promotion policy. All those faculty members who publish papers in international journals, they are paid some amount of money, say for example 3,500 rupees for publishing in an international journal, and 2,500 rupees for publishing in a national journal, along with a nice certificate of appreciation. So doesn't matter if you have less funding or more funding. If you have more funding, please give more, but giving some kind of funding really encourages people to perform better in future. So you should have a research promotion policy. You should provide access to the faculty members, to students for various research tools. So for example, SPSS as a tool should be available in the institution for accessing data for statistical computations. Mendeley is one platform wherein you could manage your references, and again a free tool for anybody to use. You could always use Mendeley or EndNote, or there are many other reference managers. Even Microsoft Word or Google Docs has an inbuilt reference manager. So you could use these reference manager and statistical tools. You should provide access to library resources. So for example, you could always subscribe to Enlist. You could subscribe to JGate. These are some of the paid subscriptions, but they give really good access to journals and journal papers, and you could always do an excellent review of literature whenever you are writing a research paper. You should organize guest lectures, colloquia, seminars, workshops, and conferences. So for example, we provide funding to our faculty members to attend conferences. We provide them with registration fees, even if when they, in the pre-COVID times, when they used to attend conferences out of station, they were provided their travel and boarding and lodging costs, and all costs were borne by the institution to encourage faculty to go and attend these conferences and workshops. But we are continuing to encourage our faculty to participate in these faculty development programs and in conferences and workshops even now during lockdown. And then you need to provide training programs, and these training programs need to be scheduled, planned. There has to be a calendar of trainings which need to be done in a very professional manner. So different aspects of research and data analysis, faculty needs to be constantly trained, because if you just leave them, after some time they'll start losing their skills that have been taught over time. So a regular practice and a regular training regime needs to be developed for the faculty if you want to really improve the research output. And then last but not the least, what will happen when all these things are being done, when you are helping your faculty to get good publications, when they are sending them in good journals, when they are being given funding to publish, when they are given funding to attend conferences and workshops. This is going to help develop a culture of research, which is of utmost requirement in our institutions. It is very important, easy to just pay to any journal and get your paper published. Okay, in your initial years of starting out as a researcher, that may be okay, and that is also one way of motivating yourself that yes, my research has been published. But in the long run, it is not going to be beneficial. You need to go to journals which review your paper thoroughly, which send you your paper 3 times, 4 times to review and revise, and that is going to help you improve your research skills, develop your skills as a researcher, because unless and until you go through the grind of publishing, you will not become a good researcher. So we need to create a culture of research so that everybody is encouraged, facilitated, and also promoted in the right direction, and then only we'll be able to improve the research output in an institution. So these were some of the innovative practices in technology and research. And the end I would just like to say is that to innovate is to excel, and because if we stop innovating, we will stop excelling. We need to always try to do new things. Doesn't make a difference whether our innovation performs to the level that we have desired or not, even if it is failing, right? Because in creativity, what is the most common technique that we use to bring out creative ideas and creative thoughts, and that is brainstorming. So if we have hundreds of ideas, we'll be able to analyze and synthesize, and then narrow down a funnel to those 4 or 5 ideas that we all think are relatable and easily implementable. But if we don't think widely, we'll not be able to have a large database to filter from. So we need to constantly innovating. So if we adopted one of the teaching learning techniques this year, we are going to try a second technique next year. We'll not forget the first one. That will be implemented till the time it is either accepted or rejected. So if it is accepted, then we need to institutionalize it, and then we need to disseminate it. As I said in the earlier part of my presentation, there are 5 stages of innovative practices. So we need to institutionalize, internalize, and then also disseminate. So don't stop innovating, whether it is in your administration, whether it is in your teaching, whether it is in your assessment, whether it is in providing support services to students and faculty. Each and every aspect of institutional management needs to be dealt in an innovative manner. Only then we will be able to excel, and that is my last message before I finish my presentation. So innovate to excel. I hope that these the innovative research and technology aspects that I have shared with you, you will find them beneficial, and I'll really be happy to help any institution, any particular educator or a teacher in helping these aspects to be implemented in their institution for any kind of help, because that is what innovative practices are. We need to disseminate them and promote them. So thank you very much for giving this opportunity to share my presentation with you today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dr. Gupta. It was really a nice presentation that I think every participant could connect to your presentation. I remember the old days when I was kid, and when I saw the Sholay movie, I feel that there is a giant Viru inside me who can fight with the Gabbar. And when I saw the Kranti, so again, लगा कि भारत अंदर है who can bring the Kranti. So similarly, after hearing your presentation, I am feeling Dr. Adit in my inside, who can really innovate. So thank you, sir. It was a really very nice presentation. So now we have some questions from our participant side. So with your kind permission, can we start with those questions?
Yes, please.
Sir, first one is online education trustworthy in totality?
See, the question could be whether your offline classes that you were taking in your day-to-day classrooms, whether those were trustworthy or not. So, students were dissatisfied even in those traditional classes that teachers were teaching. Means just trusting one single technique would not be the right thing to do. We need to, take the pros and cons of each and every aspect. The technology is not the answer to all the problems. It is only a facilitator. It is only an enabler that is, helping you reach out to a wider audience and also connect in times when these offline classes are not going on. So you can't say that I trust technology implicitly, but it is my best friend today, and it has enabled me to reach out to my students to help in the continuance of my teaching learning process, help in the continuance of the careers of the students. So from that point of view, if I see, technology is one of the best friends of teachers today.
Thank you, sir. And we have one more question. Is blended learning applicable in minor classes? Can blended learning be used everywhere in Indian digital conditions?
See, blended learning can be used at all levels for sure. There is no doubt about it, whether it is minor classes or not. Our teachers, for example, in our school, they are using it for nursery, first and second class also. What we need to understand is that students also are, in this digital age, they are apt in using these digital devices, whether they are mobile phones or tablet computers at home also. And they have, during the last 2 years, become familiar with these digital technologies. Obviously, the process of using blended learning in, say, class 8th would be different from what we do in class 1, but there is no, proof to show that blended learning cannot be used with minor classes. Obviously, there the level of engagement between teachers and students has to be of different kind, and that level of understanding and that level of comfort first needs to be developed if blended learning has to succeed in minor classes. But using technology to show them, to demonstrate them, to allow them simulated learning where they can play, touch and feel things themselves, then only blended learning will succeed as a methodology in minor classes. But effort in minor classes is more as compared to senior classes. Yeah, but I can add one more thing, that because of this digital, this digital divide in our country also has increased. All those students who don't have access to technology, they are the ones who are, bearing the brunt of being left behind in this digital age. Because earlier these students were able to go to schools, whether they were in slum areas or in villages or in places where we don't have technology. But those students are one of the biggest users of education, of the continuance of education, because of this digital divide in the country. And something needs to be done, to figure out. I'm so happy that there are many social organizations who have started donating digital devices to these students who do not have access to digital devices. But this is a long drawn process, and it's going to take time till the time we bridge this digital divide in our country.
Right, sir. We have one more question. Many villages, I think that you have already discussed, many villages are not connected to internet. So
Right.
what's a remedy for reaching the students? So I think that's been answered by you in the previous question.
Yeah, that is the sad part there, I think so. But villages, one thing is happening. What information that we have been getting from some of our students who are in villages, that since in villages the pandemic is not that serious, or it has not hit them hard. Many teachers are taking this impetus upon them to take a digital device, get these students out in the open, and somehow have the sense of continuance of education being done to them. So hats off to those teachers who are doing that, and who are putting all that effort in bringing meaningful changes in the lives of these students. But this digital divide that I already said is making things very difficult for these students.
Sir, one very important question, that some teachers are paying rupees 15,000 to publish papers in Scopus journals. So what is your take on this practice to get promotions?
Well, I'll say 15,000 is very less amount that you are paying. When these new journals, I have just seen, they are on the UGC care list. And when I went on their website, they are Scopus Index, they are in Q1, Q2 of the Scopus, they are in Web of Science, and they are charging $1,300, $1,100 for gold open access. And what kind of new business plans that these journals have got. So what I'll say is that since in UGC list also there are journals that charge you for publishing, the only differentiation that you have to make is publishing in a paid journal and publishing in a predatory journal. So predatory journals are those journals, for example, who bring out volumes every month, right? Or who bring out 200 papers or 100 papers in each volume. So those are predatory journals. They are not considering quality. Or journals who say कि हम हर फील्ड का पेपर छाप देते हैं, मैनेजमेंट का आएगा वो भी छाप देंगे, एजुकेशन का आएगा वो भी छाप देंगे, साइंस का आएगा वो भी उसी जर्नल में छाप देंगे. So those are the journals with which you need to be concerned about. But if it's a very good Scopus indexed journal, even if it charges and it is in the UGC care list, please don't hesitate in paying that money and getting your paper published, provided it is open access and the journal has to be credible. That you have to see. So paying to publish is not the devil. Paying to publish in a predatory journal is the devil. So you have to differentiate whether the journal is predatory or whether the journal is a good quality journal, even if it charges for publishing. But then there are two options. You can choose that I will not pay. So what they will do is they will not make your paper open access. People will be able to see your abstract, they will be able to see your references, but they will not be able to read your paper. Either you can do that, so then you will not have to pay, and then your paper will also get published in Scopus. But if you want your paper to be open access, if you want the world to read about it, and you want to publish in a Scopus indexed high quality journal, then there is no, I don't mind paying for even that, but then you also have to decide how much you can actually pay for that journal.
Thank you, sir. And due to shortage of time, I am taking up one last question. Can we use PI 360 software in the school setup? And any NGO other than the CBSE that is providing training to teachers in this Corona period? So these are two interrelated questions.
Right. So PI 360 is mainly for higher education, because you see at school level we don't have research, we don't have placements, we don't have certain other aspects that are pertinent to higher education. So this particular software has been specifically designed for higher education, not for school education. There are some aspects like results and some student achievements, some teachers achievements. Those aspects could be used in PI 360, but it is primarily for higher education and not for school education. And regarding the NGO that you said, training teachers post-corona, I'm not sure of what exactly do you mean by training of those teachers, but there are hundreds and hundreds of agencies that are providing teacher development programs. So for example, this is a faculty development program aimed at higher education. There are many companies that are organizing teacher development programs which have been authorized by CBSE to do that. So if you just Google the various teacher development programs, even I could look them up for you and send that information across. But there are hundreds and hundreds of agencies that are conducting these teacher development programs from time to time. So you need to just probably Google that information. I would not be having a very ready reckoner kind of information regarding what agencies are dealing with these teacher development programs at the school level. But there are hundreds and hundreds of them. There's no dearth of those agencies.
Thank you, sir. It was indeed really very interactive session. And